Coming off a highly successful and memorable Breeders' Cup, we welcome in Ken Kirkner, Breeders' Cup wagering consultant and the president of Falkirk International, to Night School Handicapping Tournaments. Ken, it's great to have you on.
Pleasure to be here, Joe, and you're right. It was such a great event this year.
Now, involved in the Breeders' Cup and becoming a bigger part of it year to year is the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. More on that in just a moment. But Ken, you've been involved in these handicapping tournaments basically since the inception, beginning with the NTRA, tournaments all over the country, the evolution into online tournaments. Discuss that evolution of handicapping tournaments and their place in horse racing.
Well, I think you almost have to go back to the World Series of Handicapping that used to be held at Penn National. That was a highly successful event back in the 80s and 90s. And then when the NTRA was formed in 1997, Tim Smith asked me and Keith Chamberlain, Mandy Minger, to try to put together a plan that would incorporate a handicapping tournament concept into a major national event. And out of that came the creation of the National Handicapping Championship. And that was in 1999, and 15 years later, it has a $1.5 million purse attached to it, with first prize $750,000. And that's developed over these 15 years into online qualifiers all around the tracks and around the country, live events. And since then, back in 2008, 2008, we started the concept, the idea, and development of the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, and we implemented that in 2009 as a different kind of event, a live money event. So that's now in its fifth year and is becoming the fastest growing tournament in the country.
What makes this tournament special, Ken? Obviously, there's a high money buy into this. At the same time, you mentioned it's a live money tournament, so the players' money and what they're betting all goes back into the handle, which can create some tremendous churn from the people that are in the contest. What makes the Breeders' Cup Breeding Challenge such a great contest for the high-level player?
Well, I think first you have to start with the event, because as handicappers, we're always looking at the quality of the races we're playing. And when you get to the level of the Breeders' Cup and you have 14 Grade 1 championship races with full fields over the 2 days, you have the best of racing. And that makes for, with the full fields, the best of betting, as we've seen over the years with the payouts and all of the Breeders' Cup pools. So you combine the best racing and the betting, and then you have the first-class amenities that are provided at the Breeders' Cup for these players, access to special areas within the facility, access to viewing stands, et cetera. It makes for a great time for the players. And then you bring in the element of the competition and playing for this year almost $500,000 in prize money plus your bankroll. So you bring in the competition of playing against 180 of the best players in the country, and you put all that in the mix, and you have just a sensational opportunity to have a lot of fun. And that's exactly what everybody did this weekend.
Well, Ken, over the course of time, there have been a lot of different contest formats that have been employed, and the live money formats are more of a betting contest than a handicapping contest, which in essence mirrors a true day at the racetrack. At the end of the day, we don't count how many winners we had. We count how much money we had going home. In other words, you have an opportunity in these live money contests to play a lot of different kinds of wagers. Do you think the live money format is the best gauge of how good a horse player really is?
Well, I certainly think that it matches what we do as horse players. So from that, it's a true sense of handicapping. And what we find out in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge is very similar to what we do when we go to the racetrack. You have one or two good scores during the course of the day, and they carry you through the rest of the day. It's hard to pick 6, 7, 8 winners a day, but if you concentrate your efforts and you have two really good scores, which is the way this tournament seems to develop year after year, these guys show you that that's really how you want to go about your handicapping in an everyday process. Find the races you like, pick those races, concentrate on those, and then make a good score when you're right in those races. And that carries you through the course of the day or the week of your handicapping.
Now, there were 182 contestants in this year's tournament, and the top two finishers had tremendous final totals in the $120,000 range. How did they get there? And if you were playing, what kind of strategy would you employ in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge?
Well, they got there. It's tremendous. The totals that they put up this year. The winner, Peter Bear, ended up with turning his $7,500 bankroll into $124,000. He got there primarily in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, where Rhea Antonia at 32-1 was moved into first place with the disqualification of She's a Tiger. He won approximately $120,000 in just that race. He had $3,000 to win on the 32-1 shot, which netted 96,000 plus exacta plus try. So he had a huge score in one race. The second place finisher was Kevin McFarland. He made various scores during the points of the 2 days. He made a 50,000 score in the Twilight Derby, and then in the distaff, he just absolutely crushed the entire race with cold exactas, cold trifectas, and won another 50,000. At the end of day one, he had $104,000 in his bankroll. He ended up at $119,000 for the 2 days and collected another $100,000 for second place in the tournament. So he won $219,000. Peter Bear turned his $7,500 into $124,000 plus $200,000 first place. He won $324,000. So that was a tremendous event. We paid the top 10 $480,000 in total prize money. The players had a great time, but it goes to show you, again, trying to pick your races and make a score in those races where you have a strong opinion.
Well, Ken, obviously not everyone can afford that $10,000 buy-in, but do you find some contestants are sponsored by other people or even group collaborations where maybe five guys throw in $2,000 apiece? Is that welcomed by the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge? And I know there are also other ways to get in by qualifying.
Well, yes, and certainly we understand that it's a high-end tournament in terms of the $10,000 buy-in, and that's not an option for everybody. And there are groups that play together. They have to put the entries in one person's name, but as handicappers, we always tend to want to consult others, and we may throw in on pick six tickets, etc. So some players do this in the same manner. But one person has to be the ultimate responsible party during the course of the contest. Now, there are other ways to qualify. We had, in Peter Bear's case, he won his seat in the BCBC online in bcqualify.com for $110. So back in August, he played in a bcqualify.com event, won that qualifying seat, his full $10,000 entry for his $110 online fee to get into that BC Qualify event. He turned that $110 online entry into $324,000. Now, if that's not a story a horse player can relate to, I don't know what is, but that is just fabulous. And, hats off to Peter for having the gumption to go ahead and make the wagers that he did. But it just goes to show you, four of the top 10 finishers were online qualifiers for as little as $110. So there are ways for players during the course of the year to go to bcqualify.com. That's the exclusive online qualifying site for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. So during the course of the year, there are multiple tournaments, and players can sign up and play online and qualify and win their full $10,000 entry into the BCBC.
Well, Ken, there are a lot of people in our audience and horse players in general, maybe people that are just getting into the game that may feel a little bit intimidated by the whole handicapping contest process. Can you first profile the handicapping contest player? I know that it's very competitive, but there's also a heck of a lot of camaraderie at these on-site events, and people make friendships that will last a lifetime in these contests.
Well, yes, they do, and certainly you have many of the uh, bigger tournaments, the NHC in Las Vegas, the BCBC at the host track Santa Anita, and there's numerous other live racing events, and the camaraderie is important to the handicapping process. It's important to make friendships and to be able to have enjoy these kind of things with friends. And when we go to tournaments, you see people that you haven't seen in a couple months, and you catch up and you still have a good time, have a couple beers and relax, and it's a lot of fun. And you shouldn't be really intimidated. And I understand handicapping in and of itself can be intimidating to new players. But with the online tournaments, you have different formats that you can play in that meet your price levels and your comfort level, and you can learn as you go along. And in many cases, on both BC Qualify and NHCQualify.com, you have free past performances that even if you don't want to play, you can look at the PPs and you can play along and get comfortable. And in some cases, the buy-ins are relatively low, and I know we're going to look at changing some of the formats in 2014 to try to give more people the opportunity. But again, if you look at the profile of the players, it's not simply older white males that are playing. We have a very good mix of people, in particular women. Women do quite well. In fact, two of the top 12 finishers in the BCBC this past weekend were women. Michelle McSweeney and Wendy Long both finished in the top 12, won their seats to the NHC. So it's a comfort level that you have to get adjusted to, but you shouldn't be intimidated, and you should feel like you can go in and enjoy yourself and participate and have some fun with it.
Ken, over the course of the last several years, we've seen the handicapping contest scene continue to grow, continue to expand, continue to become more popular. How do you see it evolving further in the coming years and contributing to the overall health of the horse racing industry?
Well, I think it gives fans another way to participate in the sport. And, we all look at how we wager and whether we like trifectas or win bets or pick fours or pick fives, pick sixes. We all have our own way of playing the races. This gives us a new avenue, a new way to go out and enjoy it and have fun and compete and participate in a way in which, you can turn $110 entry fee into a first place prize. Maybe it's not going to be $324,000 in every tournament, but in your local tournaments at many tracks, the first prize is still several $1,000s, and you win a seat to the NHC or the BCBC. So those kind of things give fans an opportunity to enjoy the sport in a new way.
Well, Ken, we thank you for your time, and obviously a lot of your hard work allows all of us to enjoy handicapping contests. As I mentioned, the industry continues to grow and continues to get more and more fun and competitive. So we look forward to seeing what you got coming for us in the coming years and making this even bigger and better than it is now.
Well, we've been fortunate, and when you can take a sport like this that you can have so much fun at, and we all enjoy the betting aspects of it, but the beauty of the sport and the competition that's on the track, and we can translate that into the grandstands and into the clubhouses and amongst our players. We can add in the first-class amenities that you have at an event like the Breeders' Cup and just give fans the experience that they deserve, because they're the backbone of this industry. They're the backbone of the sport, and we need to do everything we can to try to encourage them and to make them comfortable and appreciated every day in this industry.
Ken Kirkner from the Breeders' Cup. He's a wagering consultant and the president of Falkirk International. Next up is Keith Chamblin, the Senior Vice President of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association, and Keith is going to talk to us about the National Handicapping Championship. Keith, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
The NHC, Keith, has become the holy grail for the tournament player. It's always been the most coveted prize out there, but not just for the prize money, but even more so for the prestige that's involved with the championship. Discuss the evolution of the NHC from the qualifiers to the prize money to the number of entrants and how it's kind of taken different twists and turns over the years.
Well, it's really been amazing in a period where, most of the programs in our industry have been relatively static. This program continues to grow year over year. In fact, it's grown from a purse of $200,000 in 1999 to what will be nearly $2 million in total prize money and travel awards in 2013. I think there's been a number of factors that have led to the growth, but the overriding reason for the growth is due to the fact that the tournament play is fun and popular among just about everyone who gives it a try. There's something for everyone in terms of the tournaments out there to compete in. There's free tournaments, there's low entry fee tournaments, there's high-end, real money, real bankroll tournaments. There's a menu of options to suit everyone's taste, and, of course, that's helped lead to the growth. And, of course, as you well know, horse players have egos, and who doesn't want to win an Eclipse Award and be named Handicapper of the Year on top of winning nearly $1 million while doing it? So, it's got a lot going for it, and it's exciting.
You mentioned, Keith, the online tournaments, the internet, and the advancements in technology have really cracked the tournament world wide open, so to speak. Tell us about the NHCQualify.com website and what it does for the horse player in the tournament.
Well, NHCQualify.com is the official online website for the NHC. There are other online platforms to qualify, including most of the ADWs, the most popular ADWs, have their sites, tournament sites where you can qualify for the NHC. But NHCQualify.com is the official site. It'll host tournaments offering more than 120 seats to the NHC in Las Vegas this coming January, and it offers a number of tournaments at various price points, so it allows fans of all levels an online portal into the NHC. And like the ADWs in general, a lot of customers appreciate the convenience of being able to compete in tournaments from their home without having to travel to the racetrack. So, we see, just as a growth in the NHC overall, year over year, there's growth in online play towards the NHC. So very much parallels handicapping and wagering patterns in general, in that online play continues to be more and more popular every year.
Now, the NHC is going to be held January 24th through the 26th at the Treasure Island Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, which means there's still a couple of months to qualify, Keith.
There is. We've got more than 100 spots still up for grabs. So I encourage anyone who wants to get in on the action to go to the NTRA.com website, click on the NHC icon and look at the schedule of tournaments that remain, or go to NHCQualify.com and check out, their upcoming tournaments. They'll be giving away more than 50 spots alone on NHCQualify.com here in the next couple of months. So there's still lots of action still available and plenty of chances to win a seat to Las Vegas in January.
Now, there's no question, Keith, that the popularity of the World Series of Poker exploded due to the television broadcast we see on ESPN. The NHC has a wonderful and rare opportunity to gain exposure for horse racing in a similar fashion, but coming up with that correct formula has proven to be a challenge. Discuss that challenge and the format change in the final table that you've installed for this year.
Well, it is a challenge, and there is a lot of change that will be undertaken this January. We're going from a 2-day event to a 3-day event. We're reducing a field that we believe will be about 475 contestants down to a final 50, and then finally to a final table where the top 10 players will make their bets on the same 5 races to determine the overall champion. We'll also have a lucrative consolation tournament for all the other participants in the NHC. So it should be a lot of fun, but just the thought of it causes my blood pressure to rise. So, I think it's going to be interesting, but it definitely, I believe, will be more television friendly and more exciting and compelling as we, gravitate toward the end of the tournament and crown our champion.
The tournament's been won in a lot of different ways, Keith, from people who sprint out early and hold on to last second photo finishes, the videos that are on YouTube of Michael Bachok winning the tournament in the final race from 2012. Speaking of getting your blood pumping, those are exciting to watch, and that's what we love as horse players, the opportunity to put ourselves in a position to succeed and let the chips fall where they may. So there is some opportunity here, in the closing stages of the NHC can be very exciting.
Oh, it certainly can, and we have had people come from way off the pace. We've had people win on the front end, just about everything. But I think year in and year out, having been there for each of the first 14 NHCs, I think the people who really come closest to winning every year are the grinders, the fellows who they don't worry too much when they get far behind. They don't get too excited when they get ahead. They kind of have a sense of what it's going to take to win the tournament over a 2 or now a 3-day period, and they just stay with their program, don't start reaching for long shots, and know that if they hit a number, a price point, total bankroll at the end of the 3 days, they're going to be, if they don't win, at least they're going to be right there in the mix and have a chance to win.
Now, I mentioned poker earlier, and there are some real characters with great stories at these handicapping tournaments. In horse racing, we have jockeys, trainers, the owners, and the horses themselves. And then we also have the handicapper and the tournament player. And I think dynamic people attract fans. And there are some horse players out there who are dynamic, who are like that. How do we introduce these people to the general public to potentially increase interest in horse racing, handicapping, and tournaments?
Well, there's no question there's some characters in the room each and every year. It seems like the NHC has 500 compelling storylines, and one of the best parts about the event is that no one can buy into the NHC. You have to earn a spot through a qualifier held during the year. And the reality is that every single person in the ballroom at the National Handicapping Championship in January is already a winner just for having gotten there. And because you can't buy in, it's a very diverse group of individuals. We've got relatively newcomers to the game, but we've also got, veteran horse players who are very good tournament players and, virtually qualify almost every year for the event. But they're great stories. We need to do a better job of making stars out of the people that participate in our game, and by that I mean the handicappers. And hopefully we'll be able to do that in a better way this year through the move to a final 50 and a final table, and through storytelling. We're going to have television coverage at the event. The Esquire channel will be there. Racetrack Television Network will be there. Daily Racing Forum will be podcasting from the event throughout the 3 days. So we think there are terrific stories, and we hope to do a better job in the future of getting them out to the public.
Keith, the Esquire broadcast seems fascinating to me. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I think it's going to be a great show. It's going to be 10 shows, each 1 hour in length, that'll begin airing in January. And Esquire, the show is called Horse Players. It's being produced by the same folks out of Los Angeles who produced the show Jockeys a couple of years ago that had a 2-year run on the Animal Planet and drew relatively good ratings. So the folks are familiar with horse racing. They love the sport, and they're very passionate about it, and they want to portray it in a very positive light. So what they've been doing over the last 6 months is traveling with a group of cast members to various handicapping tournaments around the country to film the contests and the interplay between their contestants, and then, of course, the overriding arc of the show is, the pursuit of the Holy Grail, which is the Eclipse Award, and the title is Handicapper of the Year at the NHC. So they will have gone, let's see, where they've gone to Gulfstream Park, they've gone to Monmouth Park, they've gone to Belmont, Saratoga, Aqueduct, Keeneland, Del Mar, Fairgrounds, and Santa Anita. So they've hit virtually every major racetrack throughout the United States to cover tournaments throughout this year. And the cast of characters, they've got a cast of about 10 people. One is Kevin Cox. He's a retired mounted policeman from New York City who now lives in Saratoga. He's a member of the cast. Peter Rotundo Jr. and Peter Rotundo Sr., who are lifelong handicappers and kind of a father-son team, along with a friend of theirs, Lee Davis, from New York. They've got Christian Helmers from Del Mar, California, who's one of the best handicappers in the country and has finished second in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge 2 years in a row going into this year. They've got Mike Baychok, who won $1 million at the NHC a couple of years ago. They've got a gentleman named John Conti, who's kind of the Uncle Festus of the group, the old grandpa figure, who is a popular handicapper from New York. So they got a very diverse group, including Matt Bernier, who's a 23-year-old fella out of New Hampshire, who was the second youngest player to qualify for the NHC last year, and he actually fell in love with the sport watching it in his home in New Hampshire on TVG. So very interesting group of characters that they're following, and of course we're hopeful that at least a handful of them will make it to Las Vegas for the final, where Esquire will also be filming.
Well, Keith, you mentioned the evolution of the NHC and how it's changed and how it's grown. What are the goals of the National Handicapping Championship into the future, and do you still see potential room for growth moving forward?
I think there's plenty of room for growth. Over the next decade, I'd like to see the event grow to at least $5 million in prize money. I don't see any reason why that isn't achievable as long as the industry continues to support an event that's extremely popular with its customers. Fans have wholeheartedly embraced contest play, and I view handicapping contests as a game within the game of handicapping horse races, and it's another way to bring people into the sport and move them up the ladder. So I think there's plenty of room for growth, and in fact, in my estimation, this event is still very much in its infancy, entering its 15th year, and I think the best is yet to come, and hopefully someday we'll have fans in Las Vegas and elsewhere playing for tens of millions of dollars.
Well, Keith, with that, you've given us a lot of great information, and I've been involved in a lot of these handicapping contests myself, hopefully a lot more of them into the future, and I can't really explain unless you're actually there on site at some of the qualifiers or even online, the level of excitement that's involved. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, going to the racetrack is a handicapping contest in of itself because you're playing in the parimutuel system against everybody else. But in a handicapping contest, like you said, there are a lot of different qualities that make a great contest player: being patient, being able to handicap the races correctly, and being able to take a swing when you need to. But there are so many different aspects of it that make it fun. Explain to the fans here at Night School why handicapping contests are fun, and if you haven't participated in one in the past, why they should.
Well, I think they're fun just because they're another way to approach the game of horse race handicapping, and it's very social. I encourage everyone to try to attend one at their local racetrack. That's probably the best way to introduce yourself to it. There's a lot of camaraderie in the room. You meet people from your region that play in handicapping tournaments, but you'll also see people that travel around the country from tournament to tournament, playing in the different contests throughout the year. So it's very social, a lot of camaraderie, and just a very fun and entertaining way to enjoy a day at the races. Likewise, online play can be just as fun and less expensive because you don't have to get in your car, you don't have to travel to the track, and it's another way to sit at home, learn how to play, and maybe break down the barriers of intimidation of that you might think are there with contest play. But you can do it, in the comfort of your own home, get used to it, and then go out to the track and try the bricks and mortar tournaments. Great way to participate in the sport, and I think we're going to see more handicapping tournaments in the future, not less.
The National Handicapping Championship, the holy grail for the horse player, not only financially, but there's an Eclipse Award involved, and it's a whole heck of a lot of fun trying to get there and participating in January in Las Vegas. Keith Chamblin, thanks for joining us, and best of luck with this year's tournament.
Thank you.
It's time to get the player's perspective of playing in handicapping tournaments, and in night school, we're happy to have one of the most successful handicapping tournament players around the country. Christian Helmer is joining us on the program tonight.
How's it going?
It's good to have you with us. Christian, you've kind of made a mark in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge over the past couple of years, a couple six-figure paychecks in those events. Talk about that tournament particularly and why you've had some success in it over the years.
The first thing that matters to me is to be able to express my opinion as accurately as possible with dollars behind it. And in the BCBC, I can alter my wager and bet $1,000 exacta. I can bet $5,000 to win. I can bet $100 trifecta straight. Versus the other tournaments, put every horse on the same playing field. And that doesn't suit my style as well because I want to be able to go big. And what the BCBC allows me to do is to take a variety of shots on the best horses of the year competing on the biggest day. And so the data is far more reliable, which means it's higher probability betting. And for a guy like me who wants to make a life-changing score every now and then, this tournament is a great platform for that, provided I'm competing against a lot of the best players, including some of my friends.
It is quite a who's who that plays in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. And, this year we saw someone get in through a qualifying tournament online and win the whole thing. So it goes to show that if you have luck on your side and a great deal of skill, you can come through in these contests.
Well, I mean, the more participants, the better. That doesn't necessarily sound intuitive to many people, but it is, because when you are right, you want to be rewarded handsomely. In this case, this gentleman put in a couple $100, qualified, and was able to parlay that into a multi-$1,000 bet on a huge long shot. And in his case, he started with $110. So in his world, imagine betting $110 and getting paid well over $300,000. So I guess what we're saying here is he got 3,000 to 1 on his horse, and that's pretty freaking cool. And I believe that there'll be a day where these tournaments will resemble the World Series of Poker, and you'll have thousands of players competing, and the pot will be in the millions. And that's the kind of tournament that I want to be a part of. And if it's somebody who doesn't really understand what they're doing, they're having a great day, that's fine, because if my horses came in, I'm going to beat you. And I play it to win. And that's what happened this year. Is I had 65,000 sitting in third place with 6 or 7 races to go, and I'd elected to bet the majority of that money on 3 different races, and let's put it this way. I'm still confused as to how I didn't win this thing, but we have to make decisions. And the great thing about these tournaments is if you're right and you're smart when you're betting, you should be able to win at least a minimum of 100,000 to 200,000 in this context. And that's only going to grow.
Peter Bear, the winner of the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge this year, with $124,000 that he built his $7,500 bankroll up to, that all players had in the betting challenge. Christian, it sounds to me in a real money contest that we're talking about, like the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, versus a picking winners contest like the NHC, the National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas every January. The NHC seems to be more of a handicapping contest because, like what you talk about, everybody's playing with the same bullets in terms of picking horses to win in place. Whereas a contest like the betting challenge is a much different scale of a money management kind of contest in addition to the handicapping.
Yeah, well said. It is about money management. That's what separates the men from the boys. And tournaments, well, it all starts with how do you handle rejection? And in the NHC, you don't feel it as much because you're picking higher priced horses on average because everybody's picking higher priced horses. And so you have to play the game according to the context if you want to win. And I mean, if I were to say, there's one way to improve your chances in either of these tournaments, I would say make sure you know what you're going to do in advance, which means you really do need to prepare and you need to understand in a variety of scenarios what you're going to do so that you don't let the moment overwhelm you. And that can be that moment. You can avoid precarious moments by putting yourself in positions where you don't have to make difficult decisions. For instance, it may not be the best strategy to be in the lead going into the last race in a real money tournament because now you have a true target on your back, and maybe that's not the more advantageous position or bias, right? So perhaps it's better to let somebody be in front when you saw the leading team going into the last race in the BCBC bet too much. It's extraordinarily difficult to try to project what somebody else is going to do behind you. So avoid that situation by not making your bigger bets earlier on if you're afraid of that scenario. If you're not afraid of that scenario and you say, you know what, if I'm in first, I know exactly what I'm going to do and I've got a strategy down, then play that way too. But I'm saying you want to figure out where your strengths are. And in the NHC, that means you might not want to wait till the very end to start playing long shots, because then everybody else is going to be playing long shots in those situations. And so maybe you may not pass as many people as you think. There's so many different moving parts in these strategies with both these types of tournaments. But I think you got to do your fundamental handicapping. You got to know your strengths and weaknesses first and foremost, which takes decades to get down. Then you have to understand when you're betting your money management strategies, one is going to be a lot more labor intensive, which is the real money tournaments, where you have to structure all your tickets in advance, have very clear buttons that you're going to push in different scenarios based on how you're doing. And then the NHC, same thing, figure out, okay, well, if I don't hit a long shot after the first 5 races, then I need to start playing long shots, or if I don't hit my first 2 horses in the NHC because I'm betting the horses I like rather than the long shots, then I need to go to a long shot strategy thereafter. So just being really clear and focused will allow you to handle the rejections so that you're not mad at yourself, you're not beating yourself up, you're not making poor decisions because you're angry. And so I think most of the players would probably agree that their biggest enemy is themselves. And in hindsight, you can always point out to something you could have done differently. But I think the more astute player gravitates to a level where they don't beat themselves up anymore, or it happens on a minimal basis. So in an ideal world, you do your homework in advance, you do your money management strategies based on a variety of scenarios in both types of contests, and then you're ready. If things don't go your way, you've got your sets of practices to get yourself through the ups and downs, to let go of the decisions that didn't go your way, whether it's a horse, doing something you didn't imagine or making a mistake in terms of visualizing the race the wrong way. If you can do those things and then it's your day because the divine says it is your day, you will win. But this is a highly intellectual and emotional game. And I think the majority of the people lose in these tournaments because their emotions end up impacting their intellectual brain. And they can avoid that by being better prepared in advance.
I think that's pretty good advice for daily horse playing as well. I mean, I think a lot of times through the course of an 8 or 9 race card, the emotions or the frustrations can build, or some false sense of security can build on feeling invincible. That it may change the way a bankroll player structures their particular day. Talk about a regular day at the races for you when you go out to the track. What kind of pools are you getting invested in, and does it change your approach looking at the races, contest versus daily?
Without question, I have become, I think, an elite player through the contests. And just when you think you know it all, that's when you need to get smacked in the mouth and look at your ego and tell yourself, no, you don't. Because every year I graduate to a new level, and whether it's through pattern recognition, data analysis, money management, or being emotionally sound and forgiving, each of these experiences elevates my awareness. Now, in an average day at the races, it's kind of like you look at someone who's a professional athlete, an Olympic athlete, and they're trying to put themselves through a program to become the best. And if they're going to be the best, they have to have a series of practices that will keep them focused and in their routine so that when pressure comes, it doesn't, distract or break them. Now, when I do my work, I have I'm the type of person that can be easily distracted in a highly stimulating environment. So I prefer not to go to the racetrack unless I'm not going to be betting very much. So that's the first thing I would recommend to the best players. Don't put yourself in positions where you're going to be highly distracted. Now, you can still go to the racetrack. Just go to the racetrack and make sure you have a spot where you're not going to get bombarded with requests or advice or just people wanting to shoot the breeze when you're trying to earn an investment. So I think the mindset immediately must be, I'm going to battle, war, compete in the Olympics, whatever you want to call that space, that zone. When you take that on, then it's like, okay, well, what do I need to do to be at my best? And from my practices, one is doing work a day or two in advance so that I have a clear perspective in a variety of contexts. So one day is one thing, second day, reinforces it or, maybe shifts me a little bit to downgrade things. And then the third day, the day of actually the races, I have all kinds of new information, whether it's the scratches or whether it's just new information about, equipment changes or whatnot. So having the wherewithal to look at this as a business and then to break it into practices, limiting distractions, being at the highest level of preparation. And then within that preparation, I want to look at where's the value and how is the value going to be best maximized based on my goals. And if my goals are to earn 10, 20, 30, 40% a year in a long-term situation, then I would put together a model like I've done that's built on the handicapping as one end to try to identify the probabilities. So I must identify the probability ranges of the horses that I want to bet on, and then taking those probabilities and expanding that into decisions around money. Because I think a lot of people will find the decisions become easier once you're very clear on the value, because, for instance, if you might be modestly attracted to a horse, but the horse is well over bet in the exactas, and potentially you see the same thing happening in the trifectas, then you don't use that horse with your value horse. So now you just potentially just bet to win because the value's been stripped out of the equation. So it's very important to have a very clear assessment of the probability ranges of the horses that you're interested in putting your dollars on. And then from there, extending it to win pools, potentially place pools, potentially exactas, trifectas, and superfectas based on your prowess. So if your ability shows that you're picking and identifying horses above 10 to 1 that continuously come in second and third, don't beat yourself up about it and say, oh, I'm not a good enough horse player because I can't pick the winner. No, adjust and shift, and now structure things around these horses coming in second in the exacta and second and third in the trifectas, and allow yourself to be wrong in the win column, but potentially not in the second and third place columns. So every player has their brain power that allows them to identify something. People that will take the time to recognize their own patterns within their own betting can capitalize, and that can translate into huge scores when you don't even know who's going to win the race. So that's something that just takes a lot of patience to build up to, so that you're not getting sucked into the ego of wanting to pick the winner, or the ego of wanting to be right 100%. Because I can tell you the most painful experiences for me are when I know a favorite's going to lose or not going to run the money, and I like another horse in the race that has tremendous value, and that horse comes in, but I'm playing my A combination so hard that I don't give my B or C combination any opportunity to be profitable. So I think that understanding that distribution of how to bet based on your brain and your opinion is critical, because some people might want to bet it, 33%, 33%, 33% across their A, B, and C opinion, and they're very conservative players. They don't want to take a shot. Now, I'm a more aggressive player. I'm looking for a higher ROI, and I'm betting a lot less races. So I may bet my distribution at 60 to 70% on my A bet, 10 to 15% on my C bet or B bet, and 10 to 15% on my C bet. Or I might go 70, 20, 10. So the idea is map it out. Your brain is very complex. This isn't just 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. In the Derby, for instance, my third pick has won more than 4 times. And so I've created a strategy now where I allow my third Derby horse to be promoted and treated almost as equally as my second Derby horse. So I made that adjustment, and that's worked out well for me. But I don't know why that is, and I don't need to go into all the details as to why that is, but it's still profitable because I adjusted. And so I think players just have to treat every day as if they're in a very heightened playoff scenario. Treat it as this is life or death. Treat it as this is the money I need to make in order to survive. You put in that kind of a mindset, and your brain starts going into survival mode, and it's not play mode. And that shift, I think, ultimately leads to better practices in preparation, better practices in removing the distractions and getting yourself away from toxic players who might be able to bring you down or influence you in ways that you don't think is necessarily helpful. And ultimately, it will allow you to take more responsibility for decision making, because that's all horse racing is just making a decision. But if you can make the decision in such a way that's accurate, and it's truly accurate to what you're what you're thinking about, then if you lose, then, and you haven't made any mistakes, then a different game you should play, as Yoda would say.
Some sound advice on a lot of different topics, but a lot of it that resonates whether you're playing contests or playing at the track every day. Christian Helmers, fans want to learn more about you and what you do, they can go to christianhelmers.com. We thank you so much for joining us on Night School.
You bet. Anytime.
Looking for a fun and easy way to learn more about horse racing? Night School, Tuesday nights. Enjoy access to top racing insiders via chat, video, and radio. Night School caters to fans at all levels. Miss a class? Read the archive. Night School, Tuesday nights. See you then.